We are live.
Okay. Have you ever had an experience and your emotions just got the best of you and you were experiencing something you just wish you could handle it better, right? And basically, it's what we're here tonight to talk about is mastering our emotions. I think that this is a skill that many of us don't quite understand how powerful it can be to master your emotions. Because there's a lot of conversations about um, increasing your emotional intelligence and becoming better at that. And that makes you better to handle all of the ups and downs of life. But there's a bigger impact that this has on us. And when we can truly master our emotions, not only can we handle what's happening right now in our lives better and feel just smoother with even the bad things that are happening in our daily lives, but we can also tackle those big things in life that keep coming up and keep triggering us because we learn to release all of the pent up emotions, and we learn to deal with the real issues in our life. And then we find the gift in it and we're able to handle it better. So that's what mastering our emotions is truly, truly about. For me, mastering my emotions did exactly that. All of the things that I just said. I mean, I used to have a few things in my life that would just really trigger me and get me really upset, right? And I mean, I could feel myself, and I tell everyone all the time, like, I feel that in my sternum. Like, it would just get me so stressed, right? I was trying to like, and now, once in a while, that still happens for me, but more than not, I'm able to recognize the flood of like my physical response to a big feeling that I'm having. And I'm able to just kind of pause and take a really deep breath and acknowledge that I'm having a big feeling and allow it to go ahead and flow through me. But I don't continue to feed it with more. See, this is how life goes. This is why this always happens. These are why I'm never going to get to the next whatever it is, right? I don't feed it. I don't feed that emotion when it happens. Instead, I just feel it and go, okay, this is that thing that really gets to me. And right now, I'm feeling really upset or angry because unfortunately, that's kind of this big emotion that I get because I feel like something is unjust. And so I get really angry. And instead of getting angry now, I've learned to recognize that feeling when it comes, acknowledge maybe that what's happening right now isn't um, fair, and maybe it's not just, but I also then just say, what can I do to like handle the situation now and then let go of it? But I don't have to carry around those emotions with me into whatever I'm doing next or in my next day or anywhere else along the line. And so that has been extremely empowering for me, Deb. So that's kind of my story. It just made dealing with um, those big emotions easier. And instead of letting it ruin the rest of my day, I'm just now able to experience it and move on with my day. So, and that's been
Nice.
really big for me.
That's
Um,
nice. It's good. And I've always had a long fuse. But boy, when you get me to the end of my fuse, it used to be like dynamite going off, literally. And I I I couldn't control myself at that point. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna tell you a story that I'm really ashamed about. But what it's the truth. It's where I've come from, and a lot of times my anger, unfortunately, would be at home with the kids, and the kids would make me upset. or my husband would make me upset. Who knows? But I do remember there were a few times, not too many times, where I think what I wanted is somebody to acknowledge that I was upset and to feel that it was okay, like I had a reason, I was justified in being upset, and give me that just feeling that, yeah, it's okay, you're right, you have the you were right to be upset at us or whoever it was. And when I didn't get that, because I didn't get that confirmation that it was, oh, I was in the right to be upset, then I would get even madder and madder. And sometimes it got to the point where I was literally shaking. And if I had like a dish or something in my hand, I would literally smash it on the floor. Now, I never hurt anybody and I never had any intentions of hurting someone, but I just would get to such a point that I wanted some shock factor to get people's attention that how I was feeling. And you know what? That got me out of my anger, but I didn't feel good at all. Never felt good after that. And then I had a mess to
Right.
clean up and time to think about how stupid I was being. But I couldn't control it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an anger management problem. Uh, Even though it didn't happen very often, it didn't feel good at all. But I have to say now, I have had the opportunity to master my emotions. Not 100%. Every so often they do get away from me. But if I can, we're going to talk about the steps to actually being able to master your emotions. And when I follow the steps and I recognize that I'm getting upset, and I can kind of move out of that right away, then I I'm in a much better place, and I don't get angry as much anymore, very rarely. I think the last I sometimes I and if I do, I realize it right away, and I have the tools now to be able to stop it, which is really the important part, is having those tools to stop. And so that's what we're talking about today is how do you master emotions? How do you make sure you don't get into that kind of a rage or whatever? There's lots of different emotions that we experience, right? So it's a master skill and it kind of gets us to feeling great now. Deb, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you being really vulnerable there and sharing that because that's not easy to admit that, especially as parents, we sometimes lose our cool. And I think you are not alone in that. Um, but I'm glad that you shared that with us. And yeah, that's exactly why we want to master our emotions because our intentions. I don't think there's really anybody out there who ever says like, "Hey, I'm just going to lose it today." Or just feel any emotion so much that we might do something that would harm somebody, right? And I know that as a parent, even I learned to. So, like, I'm listening to you um, express that, like, you just needed someone to acknowledge you in your feeling,
Yeah.
and I know um, like I had one of my own children actually when he was younger would get so upset and he hated it when we would tell him like just calm down. Like that would just escalate him even more. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that um, people at least want to be seen for what they're feeling.
Hmm.
Um, and part of this lesson and this skill that we're learning to do is kind of acknowledge our feelings ourselves. And that's really where this mastering your emotions, that's part of it is to really understand what you're feeling in any moment and be able to say, oh, I'm feeling this or that, and really kind of dissect what it is you're feeling. Instead of just saying I'm angry, is it really anger or is it frustration? Is it disappointment? There's comes some power in really identifying what we're feeling. So I just appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share that with us because, yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And as a parent, yeah, there are times too that I can look back on and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Like, whew, all right. I don't know what that was, right? And then you do exactly kind of, hopefully you learn from it because, yeah, it's not who you really want to be. And you learn to
Nope.
be who you really do want to be. So you're showing up as your best self. So thanks for that share, though. So basically, when we're mastering our emotions, as you said, like that's just one portion of it. Anger is just one feeling, right? And it's a very broad feeling because there are a million reasons why we could be triggered to become so angry, right? Like I said, frustration, disappointment, overwhelm, right? But then we also have other emotions that we could be feeling. Um, And I think disappointment is probably a really big one for a lot of us because we're expecting life to go a certain way, or we're expecting that we're going to be achieving a certain thing by a certain time in our lives. And we think we know exactly how that's going to go, right? We're like, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to go here. Um, like in our lives, maybe to be like, I'm going to graduate high school, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have kids, I'm going to be a stay-at-homer, I'm going to have a career too, dot, 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 right? And by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be making $100,000 a year. And by the time I'm 40, my kids are going to be, right? Boom, you have this huge plan. And we get disappointed in life. And we can be disappointed on a daily basis, or we can be disappointed long term. Ultimately, though, what happens is in our trying to figure out how things are going to go in life, um, we start having these strong feelings and emotions about what's happening in our lives or what is in our lives, right? And we're going to call that the content. Now, I've come up with a small analogy where you take like the content of your life is like the furniture in your home, okay? And you've arranged your furniture a certain way, right? But maybe you're not feeling 100% satisfied with how you feel when you enter your home. Or even you could just pick like your living room, right? Like maybe in your living room, you have your furniture set up a certain way. And you're kind of just like, well, it just doesn't feel right. Okay. But if you took your furniture and you rearranged it so that it was maybe more functional or more welcoming, okay, that's changing the context of what you already have. And when we do that with our life, we can't we can't in our life go change what has already happened in our life. So I can't change the content of what has happened in my life, but I can change the context of what has happened in my life. And just like with the furniture, when you arrange it in a welcoming, warm way, like you're not going to put all your furniture up along one wall and leave the other side of the room empty, right? Like, I mean, if that makes you super happy, you could. And depending on your room, you might. But most of us are going to arrange our furniture so that it's welcoming and that it's a warm environment, right? Where people feel at ease and where you feel comfortable. And just like that, when you can take the things that are in your life and see them as um, serving you and your daily life and where you're going, you start to see those things in a more positive light. So you could have had some negative events happen in your life, right? And maybe you see that that's the content, right? It's in there. It's happened. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't change the fact that what I decided to go to school for was teaching. I can't change that when I graduated from college, there weren't any jobs. So that's not what I did at first, right? I can't change that I started teaching, oh my gosh, like 13 years after I graduated college. I can't go back and change that. But when I see other people my age today, they're like, "Hey, yeah, I have 2 more years or 3 more years and I get to retire." And I'm like, "I have like 15 more years if I'm going on this path." And I'm like, I could get really disappointed about it, right? Or I can change the context of it and just say, for me and my life, yeah, I could be disappointed right now. Like, yeah, I want to retire in 3 years too. Um, or I can just see that the time that I delayed working full time was also time well spent, because for me, it was a choice. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and to me, that was more important than working. And even in hindsight, when I look at it, I do go, "Oh, man, if I would've just went to work right away, I could be retiring in 3 years." But I would also have missed some really fun times, and I'm not saying that mothers that have careers are missing out on anything. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying for me, I was able to serve my values, what I valued most. Because of my other previous life experiences, I made that choice. And I have to see that it was a gift to me. So, just like you would arrange the furniture in your room to be the most wonderful place that you could set up, we also have to look at the events in our life and recognize that they were also happened the way that they did and that they're serving us also. And I think if we all took a moment and look back on some of those negative things that happened in our lives, we can find how they, not that we would wish that they happened, but we can accept that they happened and find a way that it turned us into who we are, and we can appreciate who we are for having gone through it. So I hope that helps a little bit with like the content of our lives and the context of our lives. When we see it as serving us, it empowers us to just kind of take control of our lives, a little bit, and then also help us in our day-to-day um, struggles to recognize, like, do I want to give these emotions the power over me, or do I want to take the power over my emotions? So that's kind of where we are. And
Yeah,
so
well, I love that, and I think I'm gonna rearrange my furniture all along one wall and make a dance studio on the other side.
I love it. I love it.
Or maybe I want it warm and welcoming. Ah, either way, you know what? That's a personal choice, right?
It is absolutely yes, yes. The way
Yeah,
that you arrange things. Yes, I love that.
yeah, but I like some of your points, like, that we can't change the past. Past is something that is history. And whether it happened a second ago or 5 years or 10 years or 30 years or when you were a child, however long ago that was, we can't change that. And so, um, kind of putting that behind us and recognizing it and acknowledging it is important. But we also have to move on because the only thing we have is the present, where we are today. Even the future is never coming, right? They say tomorrow never comes. So we have to live in the present, where we are today, and that's why we have to feel great now. And so being able to smile in the face of adversity is actually like having a superpower. And so that's part of the reason why we want to master those emotions. And you talked about the context. And so if we were looking at that context, so there's a couple things for mastering emotions. And there's an analogy that we talk about, and that is that you can treat, let's say you have an injury and your knee is hurting. And so you're trying to figure out what's wrong with your knee. Well, you could take a painkiller to make your knee feel better. But at the end of the day, you need to find out where that source of pain is coming from. And in our context here, that source of pain is actually your shoulder. So the whatever's happening in the shoulder is making you misaligned, and then you're all misaligned, so your knee is hurting. And so just by treating the symptoms by taking a painkiller can make those emotions go away right away, but it doesn't get rid of the source of the problem. So those things can come back. And that's kind of what was happening to me with my kids. I just never dealt with what the root of cause of the problem was. And so when they would kind of things would get to a certain boiling point, I was out, and that was it. Thankfully, it didn't happen very often. But then it's like you got to deal with the source of the problem, which is treating the shoulder. So let's talk about how you treat the knee, or that, temporary. Let's put that Band-Aid on the problem and get us out of pain right now. And so there are 4 simple things that you can do to manage and master your emotions and treat that pain right away, whatever that emotion is that you're feeling. And the first part of that is to actually wake up and realize that you're having that emotion. So for me, I when I'm working, sometime one of my cats likes to jump up, and he wants some love. So it's not nothing. He just wants love. But I'm trying to work and I'm concentrating. And if he jumps up, sometimes I'll get upset. And I need to wake up right away and realize I should not be upset at my cat. That is just dumb. He just wants some love. So you need to kind of figure that out right away. And that's not always hard. But first thing is to recognize that you are having an emotion. And once you recognize it, then the second thing is to identify and locate the emotion. So in my case, I'm angry because my cat is bugging me, or I'm frustrated because my cat is bugging me and I want to work and he's causing me, because, like, of course he has to go on the keyboard, right? So I have
Always.
to deal with my cat right away. So recognizing and identifying what the emotion is. And then the third step is to actually disidentify or remove yourself from the emotion. So let's say you go to a movie and you're watching a movie and it's a suspense, and you can feel yourself getting all caught up and getting into the emotion of it. Well, you're not there. You're actually just watching it. So if you can step back and realize you're just watching, and kind of step back from it and say, oh my gosh, I'm angry right now, or whatever. So let's talk about my cat. So in my cat case, I'm frustrated, but instead of saying I am frustrated, because that is putting the ownership on me, and that frustration is owning me, I'm going to say something like, oh, I am suffering, or I'm experiencing the emotion of frustration. And that allows us to back away from it. So I'm not right in it. So now I'm kind of disidentifying that I'm not frustrated. I'm feeling an emotion of frustration. And then that will allow me to step back and realize and observe it. And believe it or not, our emotions are actually chemical reactions that are happening in our bloodstream. And if you can let go of that emotion, it takes about 60 to 90 seconds to run through your bloodstream. And when it's done, if you've let go of the emotion, you will feel joy. Now, the biggest part is resisting, which is what happens. So, when my past life, I would resist a lot, and all that would happen is another chemical dump of that frustration or anger or whatever it was, and it would just like keep compounding itself until it got out of hand. And that's not where we want to go. And the thing is, when somebody else or a situation makes you upset, The other person could care less. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with ruining your day and your time and getting you upset. So if you can, wake up, realize that there's an emotion, a negative emotion coming up, identify that emotion. Then, so that's the second thing to do. Then we're going to move away from it and not own it. We're going to say, I'm feeling an emotion, not that I am an emotion. And then you're going to let it go. And that's probably the hardest part. So if you can do that, you're going to be able to treat that pain and move away from it. So 4 steps. And then I guess the other thing is that, you got to treat that shoulder and actually get to the source of the pain, right, Deb?
Absolutely, Deb. And I loved your explanation for how to deal with the emotion immediately is taking care of that knee, right? That kind of side residual effect of an actual event or feeling, right? And what you're talking about are those feelings that we have that are our triggers, right? Triggers are things that, like, when they happen, we just automatically, we're just like, that happened, and now I'm angry, upset, right? Frustrated, disappointed, all those things, right? And I love the idea of disengaging instead of saying, I'm angry, I'm upset. You'd be like, pause. And yeah, you're not going to talk to yourself out loud, but you're going to say, whoa, I'm feeling very upset. I'm experiencing some serious frustration right now, or I'm feeling seriously disrespected. And that's really making me feel angry. Totally different than just being like, I'm so angry. This isn't right. And that's the trick, right? If you could just, I'm feeling angry. It's so hard not to, though, right? Like, this person is always talking to me like this, right? It's so easy to feed it. It's so easy to feed it. But when we don't, um, we do learn to let go of it. Now, the question that you're going to ask yourself, the shoulder is the real problem, right? Your shoulder's out of alignment, making you walk funny, creating this knee problem. You go treat the knee, you deal with that immediate emotion. But ultimately, yeah, you have to deal with that deeper thing. And you have to really find out, why is this event triggering me? Why is it setting me off in this tailspin, right? Like, why am I feeling this? And the best way to do that is recognize that things happen in life. We all have a tendency, though, to kind of, like you said, whoever the situation that is upsetting you or getting your emotions all, whether it's sad or angry or whatever that deep emotion is, um, we have to recognize that it's there for a reason, and it's usually tied to some bigger, deep down feeling that we're having, right? Because we're going to give meaning to it. The event happens, the thing happens, somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody is disrespectful, right? And you're like, how dare you? But like you said, the only person that's giving that event any meaning is you. The other person's walking away. They might be completely unaware. They might be aware. They might be 1,000% aware. They're like, I'm going to show this person, right? But that's not for you to worry about. That's kind of like, that's all about them. And it's probably not directed at you personally. So you don't want to take it personally. You have to just accept that that's that person right now, and that you are just happen to be in their line of whatever in the moment, right? So treating the shoulder is recognizing that events are events, and the only meaning given to the event is what you give to it. So let's say you are at work or something, and somebody says something negative to you, right? Like where I work, obviously I'm a teacher and I'm always being evaluated, right? I have people who are like, hey, are you doing your lessons the right way, right? And every now and then, especially dealing with children, things aren't going the way I've planned it. And my job is to respond, though, right? And I'm doing this a million times a day. And once in a while, something will happen where maybe I don't do it exactly right, right? Like somebody would say, like, maybe instead of removing that student from the situation right away, maybe you could have stayed in the moment a little longer and it, maybe they could have rejoined the group faster, right? But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I've had enough of whatever. And there could be a million reasons why the student is struggling. And I do try to be very patient and very understanding. But sometimes maybe I'm just like, okay, Billy, enough of that. Let's go take a break. Like, let's just go to this break corner and take a couple minutes to just relax, right? Um, and then maybe somebody sees that. And once in a while, my supervisors are going to come and say, hey, Deb, we noticed today that, two of your students ended out in the break room today. And I might start getting really defensive, like, and it has happened, right? And in my head, I'm like, you have no idea what I've been doing all day. Don't come, who are you to come down here and tell me if I'm handling this situation right or not? You didn't see the first 15 times that I was patient, right? You didn't see that the 5 other children had similar behavior and we dealt with it all, right? I can start this whole thing going on in my head, right? Or I can simply like stop and be like, whew, okay, that hurt, right? Like, ooh, I got criticized and that really hurt. And what I have to recognize in that moment is that even if they are right, like maybe I could have dealt with it differently, right? So I could start beating myself up and be like, I know she's right. I know I could have done better. I know better, right? The student was having a rough day and I knew that and I could, right? Go in the rabbit hole, go in the rabbit hole, go in the rabbit hole. But ultimately, what it's about is I have to recognize that the reason why it hurts so bad when somebody else points out my flaws or criticizes the things I'm doing is that when I was younger, I never felt like what I was doing was enough. And I always felt like I had to prove myself. And if anybody criticized me, then it meant I wasn't worthy. Because when I was younger, if I didn't do things right, there would be like a harsh punishment. And so I was always trying to be like, all right, I have to be always nice, always on, always pleasant, right? So I realized that there's a deeper fear that's causing me to actually respond the way I am. So instead of just acknowledging, like, hey, my supervisor just pointed out that maybe I could handle this situation different in the future, I start that barrage of kind of deflating my own self instead of empowering myself and saying, you know what? She's right. I could have done better. And the next time I will, right? But instead, I start beating myself up because I have this fear of not being good enough. And whenever any of us finds ourselves in this situation, especially a really strong emotion, because I'm sure there are lots of little things that happen during our day where we're frustrated or irritated, but it's when we're starting to feel that really deep emotion, that really strong emotion, that this skill, you just got to treat the shoulder, the source of the pain, right? Where is it coming from? The best thing to do is say what happened, right? So in my case, and you're supposed to just make it real short and sweet. Um, my supervisor expressed that I could have handled a situation different. All right, deep breath. Okay, all right. Which means now right away, what I said right away was I felt. Listen to all these things that are going to come out of all this self talk. I feel unappreciated, undervalued, misunderstood, and not good enough. That's a lot to come out of just one statement from somebody, right? That's a lot. And we do this to ourselves. We put so much on ourselves that I'm like, ah, right? But if I turn around and just say, okay, which means somebody is expecting more of me because they know that I'm capable of doing better. I know I can handle a situation where the student feels empowered and I feel empowered because I am able to handle a situation that allows the student to feel like I belong in this classroom. And even when the student has a big emotion, because ultimately that's gonna be what it comes down to, is they're having some kind of emotion, whether it's just something in the class, something out of the class, right? Um, so I say, okay, so what it really means is she's expecting more of me and I know I can do more, right? What can I learn from this situation? And again, I know I'm applying this to my teaching job. And when that happens to me and that bigger fear of not being enough, um, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this is that I am capable of handling a difficult situation with more poise, with more patience, right? And I can learn that, wow, okay, so my student was struggling with something. And then my response was maybe to be a little bit short with them. In the future, maybe I'll just be a little bit more aware that they're probably struggling with an emotion as well. And we can do this with everyone. All those people that come in your life, cutting you off in traffic, cutting in line at the grocery store, um, saying something rude, right? Like, whoa, somebody's having a bad day. But don't say that out loud. That's not nice. It's just going to make them feel unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. Um, and ultimately, the next place that you want to go with this thought to really heal the shoulder is, what can I be grateful for about this event? What can I be grateful for? And that can be really difficult depending on the situation you're talking about. But kind of like I said here, like, which means that I have somebody who expects more of me because they know I'm capable of it. So I technically do have a supportive supervisor. And what can I be grateful for? I can be grateful for the opportunity to be given the responsibility to handle these situations. I can be grateful that even though I used to feel unworthy, maybe, that I have now learned to grow out of that. And it makes me more empathetic because I can remember being misunderstood and unheard. And I don't want other people to feel that way. So now I'm grateful for the ability to recognize when someone else is struggling with their emotions, and I can have control over mine to help them work their way through theirs. And ultimately, that's the goal. Treat the shoulder, treat the source of the pain. Not all you're going to have to treat the peripheral, or I can't think of the right word right now, like the residual maybe effects of this. But when you treat the shoulder, you'll find yourself less triggered, because when those events happen, you're able to respond to them from a much more just centered place. And I
Yeah.
think that's our goal with any major event that has caused any deep seated feelings of doubt in ourselves. So I hope that that resonates with somebody out there, because I am using kind of a superficial, but it's not. It's my daily life, really. So, and those are all things that I've experienced.
Yeah. And once you treat the shoulder, then the knee stops hurting and you don't have those triggers happening that often. I think it's really important, because even though you said that was superficial, there are some, I think sometimes some of the emotions we don't even realize where they're coming from. And I
That's
think it's really important to look into that. And you may not be able to figure it out on your own. You may need some help to figure out where those emotions are coming from, and that's okay. But if you can get to the source, telling you, you will feel a much better. And when I look at my kitty and I get mad at my cat for coming up, the first thing I think is, my cat didn't do anything wrong. It's not about the cat. He just wants some love and attention, and I am getting mad. So I have to snap out of that right away, because it's not a good feeling to get mad at somebody or something for no intent, that they didn't intend it. So I don't know if you're listening out there or you're watching this after on the replay. Have you ever experienced a strong emotion and then realized later that you reacted impulsively? And what could you have done differently? And maybe the 4 steps that we talked about where you're treating the knee, maybe those would help. Would they have helped you? And maybe you can think about for the next time that might happen, what that is. And also, what happens if this is happening on a regular basis? What is the source? And getting down to that, what the source is that's causing those emotions. So we have a little something that we've put together to help you to at least recognize those emotions that might come up. We have this little wheel of emotions. It's about navigating your emotions and actually being able to have clarity. You may think your emotions, thankfully, we have some happy ones, right? But if it's anger, is it really anger? Or where does that go from anger? Is it, there's, um, starts with fear, then you might find that you are thinking, well, maybe I'm not, I'm going to think about myself uh, going up on a high place. I have a fear of heights. So if I say that, well, my fear is actually that I'm anxious. And then I can take it even further and say that I'm actually can be terrified of the heights. So I know people who are terrified of heights. So the more that you can expand your emotional vocabulary and look at taking that emotion, fear, anger, disgust, surprise, sad, happy, and going outwards and seeing, kind of going deeper on it. And so, if you would like to get the little wheel to navigate your emotions to help you to kind of identify and pinpoint those emotions, then let us know. You can put wheel in the chat or DM us, and we would be happy to send this your way. And we will be back again next week. And hopefully, you're able to master your emotions just a little bit better, and you'll feel better that way.
It's very empowering.
Bye.
So,
Bye for
bye.
now.